Hi, Alyssa. How are you?
Good, I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. It's nice to meet you in
Yeah,
person.
I know.
Well,
Finally,
I guess
actually, like be able to
over
see each
Zoom.
other kind of face to face. I was really excited when my dad showed me the photo of our video being played in your daughter's class, I believe. I'm
Yeah,
really glad to see like if people are seeing it.
100%. I've been going to, well, initially my son's classes for a few years, and then now that he's a bit older, I go to hers, and I always sort of do stuff around Diwali, and for a couple years now, I've been reading Xenia's book, and I think it's just well, it's all about representation, right? And I
Mhm.
think it's really important for kids of color to see themselves, but then also for kids not of color to not see themselves, I think is
Yeah,
also important. And so both of those things are critical, and so I was very happy to do it.
I'm so glad to hear that. We can just start with a little bit of an introduction. I'll go first. So my
Okay.
name is Alyssa Rain Alexander, and I'm a high school student in Mississauga, and I'm the founder of Flipping Pages. We are a youth impact organization that aims to increase early literacy for kids, especially focusing on the representation that they receive in their media.
Awesome. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Alyssa. My name is Aneil Gokhale. My pronouns are he and him, and I am a dad, a husband, and a Torontonian. I'm born and raised in this city and have been here basically all my life. I have traveled a lot. I've traveled to over 20 countries, actually closer to 30 countries in my life. And my kids are 8 and 12 years old, and I live in High Park, sort of on the western end of Toronto. I grew up in Scarborough. In my work, I work in philanthropy, and so what that means basically is I work with individuals and families primarily and donors, and I help them um, make charitable donations to causes that are important. And the place I work is something called the Toronto Foundation. We are what's known as a community foundation. And so essentially, you've probably heard of people having family foundations. And so we are a place where people can set up family foundations. We manage the back end and sort of all of the logistics of it, and then we help them send grants to charities that they want to support. And I think the really cool thing about the work that we get to do is the impact that we're having in the community is all based on research and knowledge of sort of what's going on in our community and where the needs truly are. And what I love about it is that we're able to translate that to actually help people make even more impact because then they can be making charitable gifts to areas of the city, parts of the community, whether it's supporting newcomers or supporting the environment or other sort of important issues, mental health. We can go very specific into certain areas and really help people amplify their impact. And I think that's really helpful for a lot of folks. I love baseball. That's something that's really important to me. I played throughout growing up, and then I coach my son's team, and my daughter plays soccer. I coach her as well. And my wife and I, one fun fact, we were on the Cash Cab like 10 years
Hmm.
ago, that fun TV show, and we won $500. And so that was kind of a silly fun thing. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
So you talked a little bit about philanthropy. How did you get into that line of work, and what drew you there? Maybe what are some challenges in that area?
Yeah, great questions. So I mentioned earlier I was born and raised in Scarborough. I went to the University of Waterloo for my undergrad, and when I was there, I did a degree in science and business. And so when I graduated with a Bachelor of Science, my first job was working in sales for General Electric. So GE makes lots of big machines that are in hospitals, MRIs, CAT scans, ultrasounds, X-rays. And I was selling ultrasound machines to hospitals and clinics to radiologists. And I was doing that. It was a great place to start. And GE spends a lot of time really investing in their new recruits and really helping them sort of grow and almost like kind of like an MBA, like they're really giving you a lot of skills to kind of make you successful. And I was doing that job and I probably could have blinked and 40 years would have gone by and that would have been my life. And I saw peers that were around that were older, but they'd been there for a long time. And it's a very lucrative career. As you can probably imagine, with sales, there's a lot of nice commissions. And anyway, it was something that could have happened. And I think for me, I was sort of a few years into that and realizing like while I loved aspects of the work, I loved the people, I loved the interaction, I loved learning about the technology, I loved all of the aspects of sales. But I wasn't completely jiving with, I guess, to put it bluntly, capitalism in the way that it really pushes the agenda. And while medical equipment is really critical, and we know that through COVID, just how important hospitals are and everything, like I just I think I just wasn't fully grasping the connection between sort of selling that and providing that great service to people, but then also focusing on profits and really trying to kind of do the best we could on that side. And so in the end, I sort of about 4.5, 5 years into it, I decided my older brother was getting married, and there was sort of an around the world thing happening, and I wanted to be a part of all that. So I think I basically used that as my catalyst, and I asked GE about maybe taking some time away and doing a bit of a leave of absence or something. And they said, no, you're too junior. We can't really do anything like that. And so I said, well, I think I'm going to do it anyway. And so in my, I guess, how old was I? I was 28. And I resigned and I bought an around the world ticket and I traveled for most of 2006. And I trained my successor and I kind of did everything the way that a corporation would expect you to in terms of when I left. And then I went on this big adventure and I did all the family stuff at first. And then I went and I explored a bunch of other countries. And it was while I was away, Alyssa, that I think that really cemented for me the connection to community. So growing up in high school and then also in university, I did a lot of volunteering and I was very involved in my local community. Once you start your career, for a lot of people, I think you're so focused on making an impression and doing well in your job that it's really hard to prioritize kind of your community at that stage in your life. At sort of when I returned from my trip, I wasn't yet married, didn't yet have kids, and I was sort of thinking about how I wanted to take the skills that I developed in sales and all of this stuff, but like what could I do and how might I do that in a career standpoint? And that's where I started realizing the experiences I had while I traveled. So primarily there was two things. I volunteered in India for about a month, which was a phenomenal opportunity with young people, teaching them English, computer skills, and really helping them kind of get their footing for their first job. And then I went trekking in the Himalayas, and I summited a mountain in Nepal. And along that journey, I met a ton of really amazing local community people in Kathmandu and all across the country. And I just saw how important being involved in your community really was at the ground level. And so when I returned to Toronto, I started really thinking about how might I take my skill set and apply it in this community facing world. And that's where I sort of landed in the charitable sector. I didn't know a lot about this sector. I didn't know what kind of jobs existed, but I just sort of blindly assumed that someone with the skill set I had would be able to navigate and find a spot. And ultimately, sales is very transferable to fundraising. And so that's sort of the path I landed in. And so I landed at United Way Toronto and I was working there for 5 years. And then when I left United Way, I came to the Toronto Foundation where I am now. So, and I've been here for 11 years. The work I do is working with Torontonians, individuals, families, and really helping them make charitable gifts to issues that matter.
It's funny, as I'm doing the math, you probably started doing this work the year I was born.
Okay.
So yeah, that sounds really good. I can see what you're saying about kind of that transition from capitalism to giving back to the community and those skills that are still transferable, but maybe the work is a little more fulfilling. Um,
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think what I might also say is you'd asked me just to identify maybe some challenges. And I think the biggest one really is like sometimes the problems just feel so big and they just feel like they're everywhere. And it's like how do you really feel like you can make an impact? And I think you just have to go back to simplicity and just really stay focused, like it's one by one, and it's more by more, and you just kind of, the more of us that are leaning into this and sort of helping one another help each other and help more, like it's just, that's the mentality that just keeps me going. And I think ultimately, um sometimes I get really jaded in the philanthropic world because I feel like, oh, these very wealthy people can make these donations and we laud them and we say how great they are and all the awesome stuff they're doing and stuff, but like we don't think about, well, how did they get their money in the first place, and like how is that connected or disconnected? And I think in the role that I'm in now, the thing that I do appreciate is while I can go down these rabbit holes and start feeling a bit jaded at times about the exercise of charitable giving, what I am proud about is the way that we try to go about it at the foundation is we really try to open people's eyes to the inequity that exists within charitable giving. The fact is that in Canada, close to 70% of all charitable donations in this country only go to 1% of the charities.
Wow. Yeah.
And so there's a huge swath of organizations, especially the grassroots community facing ones, that don't see any of that money. And I think the role that we play at the Community Foundation and other organizations like ours is we're trying to constantly shine a light on those areas, because those are the underserved and under-resourced areas that
Right.
really need to lift. And I think that's what I'm proud of, because I don't shy away from having those conversations with donors now.
That's really cool. I think that's really important. Dialing it back kind of to your childhood, what role did books and stories play when you were growing up?
So you told me you were going to ask me this question, and I've been thinking a lot about it, and I don't have a great inspirational answer for you,
That's all
unfortunately,
right.
because as a kid, I actually wasn't a great reader, and I wasn't like, I liked books, but I just didn't. I love to be outside more, and I love to play and be like, I played every sport you could think of, and I was just outside a lot more. But what I would say is that the odd time when I did find a book that really clicked for me, like I know that I was into it, and I know that what books did always give me was the opportunity to imagine. And I think being a father now, I'm really reliving books now, through my kids, and so I'm seeing, how, well, like what power books have and stories have for them. And I love reading with them, reading to them, hearing them read. Like all of that is so critical. My wife, who's a high school teacher, she is was a voracious reader growing up, and kind of just, what she tells me, like, couldn't put a book down. Like there was always books around, and it was just a very much a part of her life growing up. And so, we're trying to instill that in our kids too, and we've tried to implement things like family reading time and stuff like that, just to like find ways to encourage more of it, because I think these are the way, like books just open up your mind to so many possibilities. And I think for young people, it's such an important resource that is available, especially when it comes to storytelling and kind of learning from those stories.
Yeah, I think that's really common. I see even when I do work with kids, they're like, oh, I have to sit down and I have to look at this thing and I just have to sit still for all that time. And
Yeah,
I mean, some of it is maybe they're not being introduced to the things they like, but also I think we need to cater the way we introduce literacy to the individual child. And if you can, stories doesn't have to be physical books. It can be role playing, it can be theater, it can be all these different things. So I think that's
exactly.
actually an important thing to bring up is that fun looks different for every kid.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. But I think, to your point, like there is a way to make literacy and books and stories fun, right? And it's like, because ultimately I think as kids, like that's how you that's how you teach, that's how you engage. Like it is by creating this sense of play, this sense of fun, and like that shouldn't be excluded to only like sports or outdoor activities. Like there's kind of the whole gamut that, playing a musical instrument can be fun when you're part of a band, etc. Like there's like different ways to measure it.
Yeah, yeah. What was school like for you as a kid?
Yeah, so I went to Brookmill Boulevard Junior Public School in Scarborough. I mean school for me was just like I was a pretty studious, pretty kind of nerdy kid. I loved to learn. I was kind of like always, kind of getting my work done and looking for more. It's funny, like reflecting now on the way school is for my kids who just finished grade six and grade two, and thinking back to when I was in grade six, grade two, etc. Like the amount of work that I remember having in terms of like little projects and homework and stuff like it was so much more then than I see now. And it's just the pedagogy has really changed. But it's I loved it. I had a great group of friends. I played on a bunch of teams, and I was a very talkative child, and so I still remember. I think it was grade two, no, grade one. I I would always get my work done first, and my teacher at one point, I think, because I would get my work done, and then I would just be like, yep, 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 and talking and distracting everybody. And so probably not the best thing to do at the time, but here we are. We had sort of a horseshoe pattern of all the chairs in the room, and then there was like a gaping hole in the middle. And my desk, or like the bad kids, had to sit in the middle, and I was in the middle for most of the year,
Hmm.
because yeah, I just was always distracting other kids. And it's funny, like it's funny how these things happen, but I know that I really enjoyed school, and then off to I went to a 7-8 school on its own, and then I went to a high school. And but yeah, all my schooling in Scarborough was yeah, I think just I think of it all with fond memories. I don't, for sure there would have been lacking resources and lacking kind of various things that probably could have made it even better. Those are the issues that always exist within a publicly funded system. But overall, like I think the care was there. I always felt cared for by teachers and other kind of adults in the school, and that's the most important part of it, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah. When you talk about resources, do you want to maybe draw a little bit on the representation you saw in your school's resources, or maybe lack of representation, and how that impacted you and your self-esteem?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think when I think about school, for sure, like the like so my schooling, whether it was elementary school, middle school, or high school, being in Scarborough was like the student population was always very diverse. The teacher population didn't always reflect that. And it's hard to specifically remember, but I'm fairly confident in saying that most of the materials, whether they were the school books, the textbooks, etc., probably wouldn't have reflected that either. I think we've come a long way, and things are definitely a lot better now than they were when I was in school. But one advantage I think I had was, given that my parents were newcomers and had arrived from India in the late 60s. So like while I was born and raised here and obviously speak English fluently and everything, like growing up, I had my school community, but then I also had, so my parents speak a language called Marathi, which is an Indian language. They're from Bombay or Mumbai. And all of the kind of like Marathi speaking people in Toronto, many of whom were in Scarborough at the time, like our families grew up together. And so I had these sort of two worlds where I had my school community, school friends, but then I also had my Marathi community and Marathi friends. And so all of my parents' peers growing up would have been like my aunties and uncles, and all of their kids would have been basically like my cousins. And so I would I would like get to see them a lot and connect with them on weekends and dinner parties and that kind of stuff and sleepovers, and but then I still had like my school community as well. So I never really felt like I was missing out when it came to like a lack of representation or anything, because I think I found it in other places. I know that's not the same experience for all young people, but but for sure, I think a lot of communities of various diasporas tend to find each other and support one another, especially when they're newcomers to a country like Canada. And so that certainly helped a lot during my young days.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that though, because community is such an important way to kind of push culture into our areas, especially whether it's family by blood or by proximity or whatever. I think that's really important to say just because you didn't have something here, you can still find it somewhere else. Um,
Totally. I mean, it's interesting. Like I'll reflect as well on, like I mentioned earlier, that I love to play a lot of sports. I played Little League Baseball for a number of years, and that's for sure one place where like I did not see really very many kids at all that looked like me on the baseball diamond. It was I definitely like I I definitely generally always felt like I was one of the few. And so fast forward now, what I got super excited about just last week, this is just kind of random news, but it connects the dots because so the Toronto Blue Jays, my favorite team and someone I've been following for a long time, they just had so every year in the major leagues, they would draft new players. And just last week, the Toronto Blue Jays, with their first pick in the draft, picked a South Asian young man, 18 years old, has sort of grown up in Florida. And so his name, Arjun Nimala, like he's a brown kid. Like he looks the way I looked when I was on a baseball diamond when I was his age. And that is just like it's blown my mind, right? Because like, assuming this kid does well and gets to where he needs to get and all that stuff, like in a few years, there could literally be like a brown kid wearing a Blue Jays jersey on the professional baseball field. And like that just that blows my mind. And so like that's when you see something like that's representation. I'm 45. Like I'm not playing baseball ever, but professionally, but like I just think of even my kid who plays baseball,
mm,
for him to see a guy like that who's 6 years older than him right now, but like that's pretty cool. And there's stories like that, whether it's of course in sports, but then music and the arts, acting, movies, etc. Like it's so representation is just so important.
Yeah, we can kind of, I can like skip over my next question. You kind of connected the dot perfectly there
Mm,
about representation and how you hope to see it implemented for your kids
yeah.
growing up. But yeah, that's good to hear, especially such that close connection with having brown boys in this specific instance playing baseball and that having role models for your kids to really look up to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a perfect way to connect the dots. Kind of just as a closing, I wonder, this may be a difficult question. Do you have a favorite childhood book you can think of?
Yeah, so I don't have an answer for you from my childhood, but what I can tell you is that I have a few books I want to share, a couple of favorites that me and my kids have enjoyed
Mhm.
sort of now. And then I've also been reading, like I mentioned earlier that I've actually, I guess as an adult, particularly during COVID, is when I've really discovered my love of reading. And so I've been reading a ton more for the last number of years. And one genre that I've really enjoyed is young adult fiction. And so I've got a couple books there that I'd love to share too. So I'll start with the kids' books that have really resonated for me and my family. So the first is May Among the Stars, which is an amazing book about Mae Jemison, one of or I think the first African American female astronaut, and it is a phenomenal story about Mae's life and how she was told she can't do it, and her parents kept encouraging her, and she literally went to space. Like that's
Yeah.
amazing. And so that story, it's illustrated beautifully, and it's such a great book for young people to sort of see themselves and see what's possible. Another book that is a big favorite in our house because it's all about imagination is it's what's it called again? Next Stop Grand Central. And so our kids love transit and subways and stuff like that. And this book is all about Grand Central Station in New York. And it is just like this book, when you look at it from a child's eyes, and if you stand at Grand Central Station and you just see the immensity of it all, like it's such a amazing book because it gets into the lives and stories of everyone who uses that station on a daily basis, from the staff to the conductors to the passengers. And I mean, New York is so multicultural. So like every page has different looking people and different ability people. And it's just, yeah, it's such a lovely story. And again, so well illustrated. So that's a big favorite over here. And then on the young adult side, one series and a book that I want to share. So there's an author named Kelly Yang. She's Asian American, and she's written a series. The first three books were called Front Desk, Three Keys, and Room to Dream, and they're about a 10-year-old Chinese newcomer Chinese girl and her family in sort of a suburb of LA, and they have a motel, and it's kind of just this story of their life living and working in this motel and all the stuff that they do in support of newcomers and undocumented refugees and kind of just the ins and outs, and you're looking and experiencing all this through a 10-year-old's eye, and that especially given a lot of the stories that happen in our world right now around undocumented people and the challenges that they face crossing borders. And people cross borders, like it's a last resort, right? Like they're fleeing something, and wherever they end up, often in parts of Europe, in America, and Canada, like it their welcoming isn't always very good. And so these books just really got me thinking a lot about that issue, and I would highly encourage them. And then the most recent book that I have a lot of time for and want to just give a plug to is it's called The Night Diary, and it's by Hiranandani. And it's the story of partition in 1947 that created India and Pakistan. And what's particularly poignant about this book is that it's the story, like, so the whole book is written as if, so it's from this 11-year-old girl's perspective, and she's writing letters to her now deceased mother. And her mother is Muslim, her father is Hindu. And when partition happened, I mean, we sort of know the history that, people got forced to go in certain directions. And at the time, her and her brother and her dad were living on the sort of the Pakistan side, but because they were Hindu, they had to make their way to the India side. And this story unfolds to just tell the story of their experience getting from A to B. And again, you're looking at this through the eyes of an 11-year-old, and you're just really understanding how vast this problem is, but like how unnecessary it is, because people are people, right? And all of these labels and religions and things that we put on, like it just creates all these unnecessary roadblocks and challenges and hardship and death, right? And it's like it's real. And that book really did a number on me, and so yeah, wanted to share that one too.
Well, I think that's actually a really important message. People are people. I appreciate you sharing all those books with us and also that message. Because yeah, that's really what we're trying to take away and what we're trying to tell everybody is that we're all different and we're all the same. So let's like start treating each other like it.